Hey everybody, welcome back to You Are Free TV. It is Thursday, July 23rd, 2026, and I'm so glad to be back with you here on the channel. I am up to my eyeballs in news, so I'm going to jump right in with my disclaimer. This video is for entertainment purposes only. It is protected by the United States Constitution, protecting free speech, as well as Sullivan Act and reporting. It is not intended to bully or harass anyone, never to incite violence, hatred, or lawlessness of any kind. It doesn't give legal, medical, or financial advice, and there are further disclaimers in the description below. All right, so glad to be back with you. Thank you to everyone who supports the channel. So appreciative that you do. And I will plug for my great sponsor, C60 Evo, at the end of this video. And I did a great, just a fun little 30-minute video with the C60 crowd yesterday, if you want to check it out below. Such a fantastic product. Okay, so anywho's, we have so much going on. Hopefully I'll get the thumbnail that's showing the Leviathan that Trump is going after. Sort of taking down the Mr. Smiths of the Matrix, right, or the heads of the Hydra, constantly having to wage this incredible globalist fight back, okay, the counter-revolution against the globalist revolution to destroy humanity and capture all of everybody into a prison planet, right? And this has been, they went hard with the COVID, they went hard with the climate stuff. It was, war of attrition and genocide, with all of their operatives going out and doing the battles on the fronts, right? And all of their intelligence operatives doing it behind the scenes. But now everything is more out in the open. So everybody's seeing it more, right? And you see, as Trump had, for instance, the Trump team dismantling USAID, how there's now no socialist candidates winning in South and Central America, right? Think of the massive amounts, the tens and hundreds of thousands of people, okay, involved in that operation that was USAID and its very close relationship to the CIA and, of course, MI6, et cetera, et cetera. And all of those operatives, like all these Mr. Smiths out there, being able to execute the work, okay, of like the heart of the Hydra, of the belly of the beast, of the bankster elite of the world, of London primarily as their hub, but of course across Middle East, Saudi Arabia, we've got the royals, Luxembourg, these hubs of where this power sits and resides. And so then think of the Trump team after trying to get out as many people as they can while still managing this massive onslaught that was meant to already destroy us. And as people want to go out and, scream at Trump all day, this war, you said no war. We are living on borrowed time already in this country for what was meant to happen. And for what Trump is doing, any faults aside, which matter and are important, this having to execute a plan behind to cut down the Mr. Smiths, okay, of the Matrix movie, okay, analogy here, that, or metaphor, that basically, cutting down the Mr. Smiths while you're trying to, get to, the apparatus of shutting down the core of the Matrix, right? And this is a very delicate and intense step-by-step situation we're going through. And so I'm going to get into some of that. And, seeing as I'm talking about the Matrix and, things being attached to your mind to make you live a simulated life, I thought I would mention here just here to start out, a couple interesting things, like next week in Charlotte, North Carolina. At the end of the week, I'll link it below. I think it's like a week from today, like the 30th through August 2nd, in Charlotte, North Carolina, the International Psi Games, right? Where they're, everybody can go. Costs a lot of money to go. It's like, I think the cheapest one is like $470 up to like $670. Like, these are pricey tickets. And you're going to do disclosure day type situation, okay? So used to be the contact in the Dust Bowl there, right? Now we've elevated to Psi Games, and I think this explains more why we had the really ridiculous disclosure movie, that they don't want to reveal any important technology, right? The Spielberg movie. It's all about give us access to your mind. You're meant to be friendly with these bogus, creepy aliens, okay, who just want to teach you how to communicate with your mind. They just want to experiment you on you a little so that you can, you know, use your inherent powers that are dormant. We'll waken them up with some prodding and probing, and we'll use the heck out of you, right? And there's a focus on autistic kids with this, you know, the psychic abilities of autistic kids. So they pump them full of things that destroy their connection to the world, communication-wise, and then they're hooking them up to machines to use them for, you know, controlling drone warfare or whatever's coming. And so the Psi games, the next level of, you know, what has been called MK Ultra, but this new thing of, hey, it's very cool, get involved with DARPA, get involved, especially if it's, you know, fused with, you know, the Israeli military, get involved with DARPA, get involved with, you know, IARPA and everybody else, and we will teach you how to kill people with your mind, you know, just above board, we'll just do that, right? And so anyway, the Psi games are the acceptable societal version of that to try to bring in all the New Agers and all the, you know, the people in the ascension movements and all of this kind of thing, the UFO crowd, because they didn't, all they got was from Disclosure Day, the big old movie that was a big old flopper, was that you are being kept from your brilliance, okay, by society. You should be a mathematical genius that is, you know, given to you by the aliens, and you should be 100% psychic. And so it's interesting because, and I know I'm going on long about this, but I think it is very interesting. I think it's pivotal right at this time, a month after the Disclosure movie comes and kind of flops. You're having this Psi game situation, the MK Ultra reveals in Congress, this kind of thing, or lack of reveal. But very interesting to spark people's interest. And there already is a massive amount of people that want to go this route. And you know, I think there's an important element here, because the reason these paranormal things are so attractive to people is because they do know that within them, right? It's as Christ said, you will do better, you will do even greater things than I, right? It's know thyself. And the situation of we're supposed to, you know, as Christians, we're supposed to know ourselves. We're supposed to prophesy. We're supposed to do miracles, and we're supposed to have access to that direct connection to God, that in healing powers, et cetera, et cetera. And it's knowing, it's knowing how, you know, the energy of the universe works, right? And so all these creations of God are meant to be man's realm, okay, of being miraculous beings. But it's turned and warped and made into the Internet of Bodies and Internet of Things, so that they can absolutely just, you know, use you as a battery and source of information and a source of energy, instead of you and your direct relationship to God. Okay, long story short, if you want to check it out, it'll be linked below. And I just think it's very interesting. And it's international, right? It's international. And so just think of all of the agencies that are going to be there. Okay, so going on from there, we have so much news. I'm going to jump in. Maybe I'll start here just because it's like, yikes. But we have this interesting development, okay, where you had 4,200, let's see here, 4,200 Israeli machine gun clad militia type, you know, the radical settlers with Ben Gavir going into basically sieging the Al-Aqsa mosque, going there basically to claiming that they were looking for weapons, right? They're looking for weapons. Okay, Israel hasn't been hit by Iran for all this time now. Very interestingly, hitting Jordan, hitting this place, hitting that place, not hitting Israel, right? Very interesting because of their direct connection with the IRGC. But we get the situation of the Al-Aqsa Mosque. I've been talking about this for months or years, probably, but you know, this plan to do a boom of the Al-Aqsa Mosque to try to create a massive, massive, you know, FFE type deal, where there is, you know, just a massive cataclysmic event there in Israel, in Jerusalem specifically, and to really ramp up things. Okay, so we know there's a huge operation going down now. with huge amounts of artillery, and we have B-52 bombers going um, to uh, to the Middle East towards, for this operation in Iran. And so you have Ben-Gvir in the crazy town of these people going and basically desecrating the Al-Aqsa mosque by just trampling through it for 5 hours, keeping it closed down. They did this a few months ago too. Remember, it closed down for a long time. This time it was more gross, how they did it and their behavior. And this was to look for weapons, but the messaging has very often been it's actually to make sure the weapons they've already implanted in there are good to go and ready to go. And so is something coming soon? I feel that the people of Israel might want to go, just like go, just go, just get out of there, because it's just more and more looking like this sacrificial lamb over there, that is run by crazy, demon possessed people. And so, it's dangerous, and that's my, that's my take on it. This is at the same time as Gvir is also a few days ago. You probably saw this. One of their death camps, their prison camps, their assault camps. They've created a huge moat around it where they're populating it with crocodiles, right? It's like, what is with these people? They're just sick. It's sick. And they're literally a crocodile farm, populating a moat around a prison death camp, of the IDF. And this is the man who's insane that is in charge of it, Ben-Gvir. And so this is at the same time as we're having Netanyahu running around the U.S. just saying, he's like, I'm just saying, it'd be really handy, if you could like bomb the heck out of that, is it Jigsaw Mountain? With, I call it Uranium One Mountain, Uranium One Mountain. Just if you could kind of, just come with your big bombers and help us out, we could do the rest, but it'd be so great if you would do this, right? But hey, what's happening is a B-52 bombers heading out there, left today, for some major stuff. And what do we know, right? They've recently upgraded these B-52 bombers to be massively radar capable, and nuclear capable, and all kinds of new weaponry. I'm thinking lasers, I'm thinking direct energy weapons. Whatever's going on here, there's a massive situation. And it's very interesting because remember a few weeks ago when one of these blew up in the desert, and you had one of your operators that had done the upgrading, it was literally on the flight, or on sitting on the tarmac, and just gone. I think 3 soldiers as well. There was a couple big players on that, and that happened in the California, in the Mojave. Not coming to my mind the exact Air Force base, but this happened a few weeks ago. I reported on it, or a month ago, and now apparently, solved that problem, and whatever that was about, of who they were killing there, now good to go, heading over. And so it's very interesting because we're hearing from people like, on Rich Does Politics, we're hearing from the guy who does the tab, jointab.us site. He's saying that, part of this, step by step, he's not saying step by step, but I'm saying it's step by step. And I said it in my last video that this operation, is the dismantling of the Likud party control, that is the MI6, CIA, Rothschild controlled, controllers of Israel, and all this madness that's going on is happening. That there is this, as I said, I believe they're leveraging what they can before the final takeout of what is the, the people, okay, of Israel, that are causing all of this worldwide hatred, and the direct connections. It's all the same. That it's the IRGC. It is the Saudis. It is all these people, not just organized by MI6. Okay, these are all the bankster elite, the oligarchs of Israel, the oligarchs of Ukraine, the oligarchs of, just say Israel, and they take your picture. the oligarchs of Russia that are, the leftover Trotskyites, the oligarchs of all of them, of our tech bros, Palantir. We're going to talk about how Palantir has totally taken over Ukraine, and that the guy who they fired, who was a defense minister, they replaced with a full-blown, avowed Nazi, Ukrainian Nazi, and we're going to talk about that in a second. But this take out of the Likud party and the dismantling of it is very, very tricky, because we have since 1920, of course, or even before, but we have the development, we literally, there had been the tamping down, okay, of Islam across the world, and the jihadism had been tamped down, right? And then what do we get? The ramping it up again, right? We get the ramping it up. We get the Armenian genocide. We get then the creation of the Muslim Brotherhood out of London. We get the creation of the Wahhabism, very connected to the Rothschilds. The installment previously of the House of Saud, and all of these people that are just going to be how the Middle East is going to look after those first two World War wars, because they know the Third World War is going to be another, Abrahamic war. Okay, it's going to be the biblical war, where they're putting pins. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. It's a capture, because they're parasites in their fakery of who they identify as, history, all of it. But the fakery of the self-fulfilling prophecy of the Abrahamic, play out, okay, of the Bible, etc., where it's hijacked to, be created as World War III. And so this is what we're watching being dismantled. It's like taking apart a bomb, like pulling each cord out, and slaying the main players, or else disempowering them. And so while we're looking at this, and we're seeing things like, we're seeing what's happened with the election, and we're seeing Kash Patel running over to Russia, okay? Running over to Russia, Kash Patel, quietly this week. This is after Trump's speech, and after, I've been talking about for months, the election, the international election espionage crimes being prosecuted in Fort Pierce, Florida, and in New York. And I believe it's the ones in New York that have to do, which is why we need Jim McDonald to be confirmed as the New York U.S. attorney, have to do with Russian software. Okay, this gets into Serbia, gets into, when you think Russian, think Trotskyite oligarchs. Okay, because it's like saying, it's like if Mamdani did something, whatever. Basically, Russia is not one unit. Okay, it has its factions operating deep stately, just as we do, just as every other country does. And so Kash Patel runs over there, and this isn't to go catch, one of these massive 1.2 billion stolen from the U.S. people, taxpayer, Medicaid stealers, right, running through Asia or Somalia, wherever they're at, that they've been going after internationally, which I think is great. But no, that's not what Kash Patel is doing. He's going there directly to speak for high up purposes, to do with the election stuff, to do with this espionage crime. We've heard Patrick Byrne, a few weeks ago was saying, hey, we're about to get some international input here. We're going to get cooperation from other countries around this election steal information. And I believe that, Russia would be the most likely to cooperate. Certainly not England, certainly not, perhaps China, actually, strangely. There's levels of cooperation that go on. I wouldn't think that England is one of them, or the UK, or whatever you want to call it. But yeah, so we're seeing, a massive, so there's that, right? We're seeing people like Mikey Sherrill, governor of New Jersey, coming out and trying to, hey, not me, not my yeah, I didn't do it, with coming out and, saying, oh, we had 6,600, illegals voting. And we know it's way massive, more massive than that. But basically, just trying to blame it on the software But basically, the software people came back and said, hey, the motor voter thing is not, the software wasn't wrong. We're allowed to just, to register everybody. There is no designation between US citizens and non-US citizens in the motor voter situation. So all of that is going on. That's just pieces of it. But this implementation by the DHS and Harmeet Dillon at DOJ to put every state on notice that they're going to be watched, they're going to be prosecuted, that it's going to happen is happening. However, they're hoping and hoping that through their if they can cheat through the midterms and win the midterms, and I'm not just talking about Democrats, I'm talking about the feckless, awful, disgusting, Republicans that are, completely against their constituents, against the people of the USA, just like Thune or anybody else. Mike Johnson, I think, just took over Lindsey Graham's position as chair of the Budget Committee. So yikes on that. And then, of course, with the NDAA just passing. And so the NDAA passes with Section 219 in it to fuse with Israel. This is criminal. This is treason, literally treason. And of course, the one action thing that's most important at this time, there's so many, but this one's huge, and please do it. Just call your senator, 202-224-3121. Okay, 202-224-2321 directly to Thune, or use Bill Blaster app.org. App it if you're an apper, and just get those people to know that you massively will never vote for them, that that what they're doing is anti-American, and that it's absolutely it's sedition. Basically, the American people want this Save America Act. They want it. They're trying to attach it now to the Stop Act, right? This is, again, another anti-trade, insider trading act. They already have the Stock Act, which is the Pelosi Act, Stop Trading on Congressional Knowledge. But they need another one because it continues to happen. And so, they're attaching it to that because they also know that the Democrats don't want that either, because they literally, it's all a criminal syndicate that is our Congress, is our House, and our Senate. And there's so few that are good, and we praise the ones that are. And we pray for them constantly. But, as we, continue to watch all this, and we watch, how Iran is now being, they've been leveling bridges and roads, which is usually a preparation, preparing the ground, okay, for the attack that's coming. And there is some big attack coming, and that could just be, not just, but, will this be, in, Bandar Abbas, to try to create a buffer, okay, for what is going to be the attack on Cargo Island, or this kind of thing. There is obviously going to be something huge coming, and so prayers for that, because it's awful. It's awful that people are dying, and it's awful that soldiers are dying, that people who signed up to serve and protect the country are actually dying, and it's also that we have been in this war for so long. And people who don't understand that think this is a new war because it's called Iran right now. It is very sad. It's horrible. All loss of life, absolutely, 100%. And it's also that we have no choice. Like we don't have a choice to not fight this war. It's not just Iran. Iran is the state where it's happening because of the massive war of attrition against America, the control, the insipidness of like a nest of fire ants, okay, just devouring this country like giant parasites. And I'll give you an example of that, which has to do with Carney out of Canada. And but one of the best descriptions I've heard in a while, and this again came out of Rich Does Politics with Jim Torma. Fantastic video. If you haven't watched it, I linked it below. I'm going to try to break it down, but talking about Carney and how this just on a steal for all out of Canada, the people in Canada totally, just cowered down, just, taking their their goodness used against them, just the mind control, all of it. And of course, Canada being pitted against the USA. There in this world war, there is a pitting, trying to pit Canada against the USA way back, just like in Revolutionary War times, and that this is the dominion of the crown versus the independence of what truly is the basis is a Protestant Christian country, okay, based on the values of independence that come with freedom as a direct relationship to God, and and you have the grace of people like George Washington, who insisted on the good behavior of the Revolutionary Continental Army, where it was basically, we're not going to treat the British how they treat us. Where we are going to, appeal to God. We're going to appeal to the grace of God by behaving well in this fight. And that's why you saw people like Benedict Arnold fail and then become one of the greatest traitors in American history, was his inability to act in those ways. The divine providence involved here, and I'm just off on a tangent here, but anywho's we get back to what's going on with Canada and Carney, and of course he was the operative that came to replace Chrystia Freeland. She was the deputy prime minister, but she was really the prime minister, just with a puppet that was Trudeau in Canada. Okay, and she's off in Ukraine now. She's working directly with Zelensky for the reconstruction project, and closely with the World Economic Forum and the bankster elite. Basically, what's going on is Carney is starting this huge bank, and it's so intense to hear about this. With the globalist team of hitmen. So this is why the Ukraine war keeps going on and on. They need World War III because they need to, for one, they want to kill us, and two, they want our energy. They want everything that we have to give them, resource-wise, and they're broke. Where does all the money go? What do they do, right? It's insane the amount of money gets spent on such ridiculous things. It's insane. How and why these people live this way, as just giant parasites, giant ticks sucking off the resources, okay, of us and of the earth and just everything. I'm not talking about fossil fuels here. Those are good. Those are renewable, turns out, when used well, and the earth done in the best possible way. What we have here is just giant bloated tick, parasite, demonic possessed Satanists, like we just saw the massive Satanism being exposed out of Israel recently. Well, in Canada, Carney, who was of course head of the Bank of England, then comes over, and Chrystia Freeland, also high up in the World Economic Forum. She's still on the board of the World Economic Forum, and now she resigns right before Carney comes in. She flees to Ukraine because she's supposed to do the reconstruction massive grift in steel, because the USA is having to end its grift, massive money laundering operation that is Ukraine, and all of the economy of sin that's funding globally for City of London, we always say, but we're talking about all of the richest people in the world and the cartels that they fund and run to create this economy of sin that funds them, right? And so Ukraine being a massive source of that. And it's, once in a while I think about what Lindsey Graham's up to in the never world, what he's experiencing. But anywho's so Carney, we have the great breakdown by Susan Kokinda talking about how Carney's globalist hitmen team, that is his administration, where he has literally, this gets into what I mentioned in my last video, Dominic LeBlanc, who is his trade minister, dealing with Trump on U.S. trade, where Trump is putting this 50% tariffs to start in about 25 days or whatever, on products that Canada has been tariffing against us for like 100 years, like since 1930. Okay. basically Trump saying, cut it out, or, pay us 50% tariffs, right? And stop that air pollution with your crappy forest fires. But what we've got here, Dominic LeBlanc, who is the trade minister, okay, to the USA, he is the King's Privy Council president, right? Right? Remember Lord Malik Brown when he was hanging out in Canada all the time before this? They love to have him in their dominion. So, and Malik Brown was, right up in there with DOMINION machines and Smartmatic. And then he also was, at the time, the head. He took over and became the director of Open Societies Foundation. And all these people, they're all from the same gigs. They all run through these offices. So that was Lord Malik Brown. He was also head of the Pilgrim Society at the time, right? And then you had Kamala Harris's husband law firm was also run by a very high up, one of the chief, directors of the Pilgrim Society as well, handling her. And so when we look at Dominic LeBlanc as the president of the King's Privy Council, he is the one warring, against the U.S. And devising with Carney this plan for how they're going to parasitize. If the U.S. can create peace, they're trying to buy time to integrate into Ukraine's new structure as much as possible. And so what we have here is this bank that Carney has been touting since he went to Turkey for the NATO conference. And he's like, we got, let's reconstruct Ukraine. We're good. We're ready. Even though they're not, they keep continuously, the BOM being, they just put in the Nazi commander whose chief objective is to destroy energy infrastructure in Russia with Palantir guided drones, attack drones. So we'll get to that. But basically what we have here is this $134 billion bank, okay, that is, and there's others in there that I can get to, and I can't do everything tonight, but basically what we're looking at is a bank that is called Dsrb, which is the Defense Security Resilience Bank, okay, that Carney has created as this beast to kind of show it as this wall against Russia, supposedly this Dsrb, which is basically how to parasitize off the Ukraine reconstruction, and on the back of the peace that Trump is going to execute. Okay, and Trump wants to see Ukraine rebuild without stealing and stripping and raping everything out of Ukraine, and to become a trade partner, okay, and to bring, come into the 21st century of bilateral nations being sovereign and having trade, as it's such a rich country resource-wise, even though it's been shot to hell now. Whereas the elites want to suck off Ukraine, whether it's the Crown or and Andy Burnham has been in direct contact with Carney, the new PM of England, might as well be London. He is directly already been talking to Carney about the reconstruction of Ukraine, and already told what to do. Okay, as far as we're going to send missiles, we're going to do all kinds of stuff, but don't worry, we're going to take a shit ton of money out of Ukraine, and everybody's going to profit off this. After Trump team is trying to get the peace, trying to end it. Rubio talked to Sergei Lavrov at the ASEAN conference in Philippines today, or yesterday, and basically they had I think it was today, but time difference. They had the conversation where Russia made it clear, no, we still have the same things. We're keeping Donbass, we're keeping the borders where they are, and no EU, no EU NATO situation for Ukraine. That can't happen. And, and we're really pissed off and upset about the instigation of more hostilities that Ukraine is doing, and with their proxy countries in the Baltic corridor there. And this is exactly where Carney is setting up this bank to fund this war chest to continue to push towards hostilities with Russia, but also to create the mechanisms with Chrystia Freeland there with Zelensky as the one in charge of reconstruction, and Palantir, integrated into all forms of, all the economy, education, healthcare, and the military, Palantir, and all of it. And of course, Fedorov, Mikhail Fedorov, who was just fired as defense minister, was the one who brought Palantir in. And so you have all this going where this bank, Dsrb, the Defense Security Resilience Bank, located, supposedly its headquarters is going to be in Turkey, right? With this appearance that Turkey is the flippable, the sort of non-committed, Islamist, radical state there in NATO, amazingly, and with its massive military. And so they're going to pour all this money in, even though Ukraine is still BOMBing, Turkish ships in the Black Sea. A sailor just was killed today on one of these ships from these drone assaults. But they don't care about the people. They don't care about the people. But what we get here with Defense Security Resilience Bank, it's going to be located with headquarters in Turkey, Belgium, of course, Luxembourg, we're talking the deep old Nazis, the royal families, massively. And Latvia, right? They've been saying, the president of Latvia spreading all of the fake news that, Russia's about to attack us, Russia's about to attack. All of this going down, Romania and what's gone on there with the coup. Greece, and Albania, right? So Albania is going to be part of this Dsrb bank. And so all very disturbing. They already have something like $900 million already assembled to go in towards a war chest, towards more weapons and things like this. But they're going for 134 billion with massive private capital and all of this, and to engage very much privately. We're looking at World Economic Forum. We're looking at what is is it Black Ridge? What is, not Black Ridge. What is the other? It's kind of a war between BlackRock and Brookfield. Brookfield being much more City of London based, and they're vying for all the resources of Ukraine and the weapons production and the drone build out production. That's going to then, Ukraine has been the build out area of the world where it is the proof of concept of drone warfare being the future, and how they've been able to do it, of course, massively with Palantir. And so we look at this huge bank going in where, after bleeding Canada dry, it's already insolvent. Then they're going to, of course, steal what they can massively out of Ukraine, as if they haven't already. But there's much more to take. Ukraine's a very resource-rich country. And so it is this parasite tick, just awful thing attached to the attempt to try to get there be peace and end the war of Ukraine and Russia. And so this is what's going down. And we've got Chrystia Freeland there at the helm, while she's also simultaneously CEO of Rhodes Trust. The Rhodes Trust. So we're talking Rothschilds, we're talking all the biggest, members of royalty, members of the elite, top bankers, all of this. And so there was a gathering with Victor Pinchuk. Remember Pinchuk? He's way back to Burisma. We're talking the oligarch that funds the Atlantic Council. Funds the Ukrainian oligarch Pinchuk, right? Everything Biden, everything installing Zelensky with Kolomoisky. They recently gathered all about this exact thing, with 76 countries present in the IMF bank, and all of this for how they're going to bleed Ukraine dry and keep this war, World War III, going. So Let's move into then the Ukraine. Remember, I've been talking about recently, there's just been this massive revolving door of firings happening in Ukraine right after the NATO summit. And you saw the prime minister kicked out. You saw and she becomes the U.S. envoy, and then you get the U.S. envoy, brought up on charges of fraud. You get the defense minister fired. You get uh, the now even Alexander Sirski's been fired, right? He was the head of the commander in chief of the military, and now they're replacing him with this Nazi guy. So this has been like whoo, like quite the 10 days, and so this is where we get. Let's see, we get the firing of Mikhail Fedorov, right? And he's the Palantir guy. And immediately Palantir offered Fedorov a job like a week later. Remember, like last week, I'm like, he's been fired. People are up, they're literally out in the streets protesting. He's like 34 years old and this good-looking like tech bro, but he wants to be president. He wants to be the new president once Zelensky and the peace and the reconstruction, right? And so he courted Palantir hard, not that it was hard. And 2022, Palantir moved in and just started, putting their Skynet into everything. And of course, hugely doing the drone warfare that now is the standard warfare of Ukraine. And now they're going to go hard against Russian infrastructure even more, especially energy. This is the whole energy corridor up from Iran, up through southern Russia. And so Mikhail Fedorov, he gets fired, and then that was because he fought so much with Sirski, Alexander Sirski. And then it turns out that then they fired Alexander Sirski, who was the commander-in-chief of the military. Now they put him in with a literal Nazi, totally avowed, whose name is Mikhail Drabati. And he, in his thank you Facebook message to Zelensky, literally said, "Glory to the nation, death to enemies," which is like the Ukrainian Nazi slogan from the 1990s. And he's wanted for war crimes by the Russians for the just total BOM being in the Donbass to kill the Russian speaking Ukrainians. That going on way back 2014, since the Maidan attack and takeover and coup, where they started, just not randomly, that they went after the Donbass, etc., to kill the Russian allied Ukrainians. And it was the Azov Battalion, the Nazis, and he was one of them. And very skilled at what he did, and grew to be more and more in charge of different units of the military. And he's wanted for these war crimes for the mass killing in the Donbass, and his new agenda is what he's been tasked with is ever increasing offensive actions against Russia to bring the war more and more towards Russia, but especially with the deep to go, deep penetration attacks is the new thing. New operations behind enemy lines, with civilian and energy infrastructure being the first one, being the highlight. And civilians. And so we're in 2021. So this is one of their, like Zaluzhny, the ex-general that they've been pushing from the UK, who's ambassador to the UK as being the new president post Zelensky. They've also kind of pushed this guy in 2021, and he went to this elite UK military training school, and he was granted the Sword of the Queen of Great Britain, this ritual, the Sword of the Queen of Great Britain, by the then UK ambassador, Melanie somebody or another. And at that time, he's presented with the sword. It's called the transitional sword. And he gets on his knees and kisses the sword for the UK, right? These people are all Nazis. Just think van der Leyen, okay? Literal daughter of a Nazi, and her mother, his family was the largest slaveholders in South Carolina. She grew up in the UK with these same people of the European Internationale, which is the Trotskyites connected to the massive whether it was Bolshevism, whether, whatever it is, okay, that was about how do we communize the world through massive violence and destroy sovereign nations. These are the people, the European International, that is, von der Leyen was high up in that before she got appointed here and there and there and there and there. And then finally into the EU Commission. She was supposed to be the head of NATO. Okay, I'm talking about the EU Commissioner von der Leyen, Ursula. Okay, and so anyway, now they've got a Nazi in there who's going to go dirty, just happily do, all kinds of mayhem coming up because they needed somebody with no, nothing, that they're totally controlled, nothing to lose. For what they're about to do with the FFs that are going to be happening here with Russia to poke the bear, to of course retaliate and hit NATO areas. And just think what I said about the bank, Latvia, Romania, all of these areas. There's questions of, Germany could be struck because of their creation of drone parts, etc. And so when we look at that and we think, we go over to Mikhail Fedorov and him, they're trying to hire him at Palantir, but he really wants to be president. And supposedly the people of Ukraine are leaning towards him in that direction as well. Well, the situation with him is that people like Skursky, who used to be the defense minister, Sersky, he basically, the reason he was against Fedorov is because the military, the actual people that aren't totally corrupt and paid for, bought off, and golden toilets and all of it, the people who want their country, want peace, that want it to end, that are fighting, okay, to basically get this, what they believe is this war of aggression, is that they're really against Fedorov. They were really against the drone warfare situation becoming the new, this is the way we fight, okay? And all these operations of deep penetration into Russia, they were really against it because they're saying it's not helping us. It doesn't advance anything, and it's certainly not going to make Russia give up. And all you're doing is creating more and more destruction to escalate things with integrating this massive drone warfare program, run by AI. And of course, Israel, we know, first did this. Okay, it was Israel and what they've done with their AI in Gaza and the slaughter in Gaza and their killing machine there. So, with Israel North, we've got, the Nazi commander now in charge, and the Ukraine military very opposed to this drone warfare escalation of conflict, and how they know it's going to lead to more and more destruction for Ukraine itself. And, as anybody in their country would love things like their long-standing landmarks, their neighborhoods, their homes, and watching their country being systematically destroyed by globalist operators, just massive, greedy, disgusting people. And so, might leave it there. I'm sure there's a lot more I could say, but I think I'll leave it there for today. Thanks so much for watching. If you found something that was beneficial, basically new information or a analysis that you find to be helpful in your understanding of what's going on, consider helping the channel. It would be so appreciated. It's a shoestring budget for this channel. And so I could do more videos, more deep dives, if I can get, just a way to function more. So there's ways to donate below, and it's so appreciated if you do. I'm so thankful to everybody supporting monthly. You make it happen, and I'm so grateful. And I also want to make people aware of the sponsor of You Are Free TV. This is c60evo.com/YAFTV is the landing page. Maybe I'll turn on the little banner. And you can get 10% off with the code YAFTV, and you can get 15% off if you've ever donated to the channel. You get 15% off, and this is of course the miracle molecule that is ESS 60, the purest carbon 60 on the market, made in Houston, Texas, American-made product, just the purest oils. This is the coconut. This is the olive oil that is the king. You know, the Kingmaker here, this is the one that has the most powerful amount of ESS60 in it. And basically, this is a mitochondrial cleaner. It promotes health and aging by cleaning out your mitochondria, which means you have cellular health, which is what helps to prevent or to heal all the degenerative diseases that exist. It's anti-radiation, one of the most incredible products for anti-radiation out there. So it helps with everything from EMFs to the crap that's going down when they're doing the chemtrails outside and the blocking out the protective layers, okay, of the atmosphere, and all of a sudden you're burning to death because and it's only because you're standing outside compared to when there's no chemtrails and suddenly you're not burning anymore. So anywho's, this is used by all the big C clinics that are alternative to help people heal from the big C, bought up by the caseloads, and for people with central nervous system disorders, but also just inflammation. You know, great for workouts, great for better sleep, amazing for better moods and better focus, cleans out your neurons, crosses the blood-brain barrier and cleans out those neurons. It is an amazing product, and it has helped me so much in everything I've been dealing with in this last year that I've talked about multiple times, multiple videos. But it is an incredible product, and they're great sponsors to sponsor this channel. So check them out again. The banner's right there. And thanks so much. I so appreciate you, and I will see you tomorrow. You are free.